Let's just get going. Thank you, everyone, for hopping on. I know I see a lot of people hopping right now on the call, so thank you very much for getting on here on time. And thank you to our amazing guests. Alex and I have been wanting to do this one for quite a while. If you guys don't know, Adam Slutskin is basically, let's just call it what it is. I think, Adam, you've created a lot of the fame and the notoriety of what a good sales team is in the MSP channel, and really the thought leader in quite a bit of the tasks and the process that we see a lot of people mimicking as well. And I think a lot of what's out there has been kind of what even myself and what Alex have tried copying in our own ventures without even knowing it. So we really appreciate you hopping on this call.
Can I call something out, Kyle? I think the key to good sales is exhibited in the background of Alex and myself. If y'all haven't noticed, I am a Star Wars nerd. All the helmets, and figures, and of course, Alex, looking at your background. And of course, Kyle, I do
Yeah.
play guitar as well. So dig your back down.
And Dean just said, it's WWAD. What would Adam do? Tattooed is what his next tattoo is going to be.
That's not a bad one. That's
Appreciate
not a
that.
bad one.
Well,
Yeah, so,
uh,
so Kyle, we prepared some fancy slides for today. Why don't we start with that?
Let's do it. Let's do it. And here's our faces.
Yeah.
So really kind of going
We haven't
forward.
had enough of those.
Yeah, right. People at this point know. I'll let you kind of drive a little bit from here. But if you guys don't know who I am, my name is Kyle Christensen, founder of K7 Leadership, but also some consulting agencies that you may have worked with in the PSA bookkeeping and finance world. I've also been an EOS implementer, scaling up, all that fun stuff, really looking at companies that want to grow fast and scale. It's all that boring stuff that you guys know about me, but real more important are these better looking individuals that are here with me.
I don't know about that. I just have better hair. So if you guys don't know me, Alex Farling, I was an MSP for almost 17 years. I was one of the co-founders at Lifecycle Insights, and now I am at ScalePad helping our partners kind of adopt some of the additional benefits that we get being part of a larger company. So it's been a pretty cool experience for the last 6 months or so. But a bunch of my career was in sales. It was in account management and these kind of things. And as I started to launch Lifecycle, Adam was super generous with me with his time, as he has been with way too many people in this space. So let's get to our guest for the day, Adam Slutskin. Adam, you were the Chief Revenue Officer at ConnectWise, at LionGuard. Now you're one of the co-founders at CyberFox. Tell us a little bit about where you come from.
Yeah, just ex-military guy. Started my life as a high school dropout. I always like starting there because if you think you're lost or you're out of time, always a chance to pivot and change. Did 20-something years in the military. A lot of what I've incorporated into the corporate side in 25 years is a blend, kind of that blended view of what I've learned in both. Leadership is leadership, accomplishing task objectives. That's kind of sales revenue 101. Was lucky enough not only to be employee like 50 at ConnectWise, but before that I was employee 40 at Kaseya. And so I've kind of been in space a while, have kind of surrounded certainly sales and working with MSPs for not going to be that much longer, about 20 years, and just love being a part of the channel and giving back and helping as much as you can. Anybody can pick up the phone and call me. If you don't have my number, all you have to do is hit me up on LinkedIn. I usually respond within an hour, and always glad to get on a call and help demystify any of what we're going to talk about on some one-on-one time. By the way, just like these guys, the people that just want to keep passing it forward and giving back. So that's hopefully
Don't
what
worry, we'll push your personal cell phone number on the last slide so that everybody who sticks around through the whole thing can have it.
Yep.
And and I think it's so important too, because what we've been talking about and what Alex and I did in the last session was really looking at building out a sales operations and looking at the maturity that an organization can have. And it's not just the silver tongue. It's not just the being at the right place, the right time, or waiting for referrals. There's so many ways where you can be proactive about sales and proactive about finding that next relationship for your organization. And when we were starting to look into this process, what we find a lot of times is there's so much confusion top of funnel. because, right, so many of us get thinking it's just cold calling, thinking it's just, I've got to be the guy knocking on doors. And we don't think of it as an MSP, that a lot of times we don't even build out our sales process because we don't have the at bats. We don't have the opportunity to mature everything that happens after the fact, right? You get one at bat maybe every 3-4 months. So you don't go to that next level. And
Yeah, we
what we
talked
really
about that a
wanted to
lot
do,
last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. The average MSP, I think we've decided the average small MSP gets 6 to 8 sales opportunities a year. That's not enough time to be good at it.
Oh, and by the way, let's dig into that further. Most of those 6 to 8 generally come from referral. So imagine what happens when we can augment referral with some proactive sales motions.
Yep, 100%. Sorry, Kyle, didn't mean to cut you off there.
no, it's all good because really, it's rolling into that and really discussing, right? And for those of you that weren't on that,
Okay, sorry.
no, real quick, just for those of you that weren't on the sales ops call that we had last week, there's a link down there. There's a QR code. It's all on YouTube and everything. If you do need a refresher, like I said, these will always be posted publicly. So this is not anything that we're doing out of like a call to action or anything. The only call to action is to learn, grow, and mature. And it's really that right fit, that top of funnel. And I'm curious, kind of going backwards a little bit, Adam, what do you typically, what is your approach to sales ops? Is it similar? Is it different? Is it something that you've kind of built over your experience?
I would tell you that every company that I've been at, it's a little bit different, but the blocking and tackling is always the same. And going back, I don't know if the next slide's going to do it. Is the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about commitment, because it really has to start with that before anything. As I work with a lot of you and some of you that are maybe on here or watch this, we've done some one-on-one time. The main thing is, like anything in life, you have to start with a commitment, a belief that you're going to do it. And so what does that mean? That means this is not, you should not be intimidated by this. Some of the early discussions that I have I want to keep this very focused on the MSP's experience, not mine. And because you guys got to understand, we all start the journey with the beginning of one. So people go, well, you're a vendor, you're bigger. Nope. ConnectWise, I started with one sales rep, LineGuard, one rep. And so if we kept playing this out, CyberFox, one rep, it's no different. We're the same. It's a matter of how deep you're going to go. And based on the opportunity for you may stop where you need a one-person sales team. Could be 5, could be 400. A lot of MSPs now have very big sales teams, especially as we're seeing the growth and expansion. Some are much bigger than even the one I have currently. And some, even scale calls.
No, it's funny, Adam. I've been noticing the same thing, that bigger MSPs are starting to shift into that sales culture. I think they're starting to discover that the only way to truly grow top line is you need more at bats, because you are going to get no's, right? You live for the no almost, because on the other side of it is the outcome at the bottom of the funnel.
So some of what gets confused, right, when we talk about sales and really about go-to-market, right? Because it's not just sales, it's sales and marketing, marketing and sales. So a lot of people see sales as intimidating, as art. And I would tell you, you would be surprised how much I live inside the data. I love the selling and the communication, the engagement component, but most of the battle is solved within understanding the data, the numbers. And I think that should be very comforting for MSPs, because, you guys are usually very comfortable with data, with technology, right? We understand process and workflow and a development methodology. And it's really the same in sales. So don't be intimidated because of art. A lot of what we're going to talk about really is, it's the foundation is the data, right? For example, one last thing, and then we'll jump back in. Hey, guess what? Congratulations. Every one of you has a system of record, right? I've got to assume almost every one of you, if not every one of you, has a PSA. You have a system of record that you can begin to build your sales processes and your strategy. I will tell you through my consulting, and then Kyle and Alex, I want to hear if you've seen this. I cannot tell you how many times I'm working with an MSP over the years, and I go, let's dive into it. Where do you keep your customers and contact info? Well, here it comes. Well, here, this big spreadsheet. And I'm like, oh, you're not using your system of record, right? So that is one thing that we do have to commit to. All of your information needs to be into your system of record, into your PSA. I never worked at Autotask, but I know that it's extremely similar to ConnectWise. And I ran a 225 million ARR company with 300 salespeople worldwide inside ConnectWise. So I know the PSA scales.
Yeah, they can definitely do it. And so much of what you're saying is a lot of what we talked about in that call 2 weeks ago, which was, you say there's a lot of the sales can be just seen in the data, right? It shouldn't be that scary. And I say that it's not black magic. There's nothing about what we do that isn't just another MSP process. And if you refine and continue to work on the process, you'll find that you get the same outcomes that you get with technology. This really isn't that foreign to MSPs for some reason. They just have a mental block on it.
They just haven't done it, right? It's like anything. I never created my own product, right? I'm not a developer. And, in reverse, I would probably feel slightly intimidated. And of course, when I talk to really smart people that write code and develop, they go, oh, it's not that hard. And so I do appreciate
right.
that I'm talking from a position of 25 years of experience. But I promise you, and it is why I preface, and I'm very transparent, I was a high school dropout. I was lost. I joined the military, and somehow I found my way into technology 25 years ago. And if I can do it, anybody can do this. It's not hard, I promise.
Well, and I think it's with anything, and I resonate with that a lot, Adam, because there is that binary, there is that accidental entrepreneur that I keep touting in this, that we did this whole IT MSP adventure because we were really good at IT, right? We were extremely good at it, and we said, I can make money off it, and I can detach myself from someone owning my future. But what happens in there is we lose the ability to have iterative implementation or improvement, right? Because we think we have to be the expert to do anything, and perfection becomes the enemy of progress, right? Perfection becomes the enemy of getting a little bit better. And the only way to get a little bit better is to find more no's.
I'll give you some just on that, right? So if you think about what kills more MSPs, so from those 9 years at ConnectWise, 30-something thousand MSPs that bought something from us, I could tell you that if you were or are a sub 5 employee company, 50% generally did not make it to year 2. But from that point forward, the ability to make it to the next year dramatically increased. The reason I bring that up is not to scare you if you're in that boat. It's to explain the number one thing that gets them, or you, if you're one of them, is generally someone goes and starts a company. Maybe you were the engineer or they were the engineer at a MSP. They said, I'm going to go do this on my own. You get that first couple customers and you go, this is cool. But here's where you hit the wall. Growth. We have to add more revenue, right? We need to grow. We got to pay bills. And so the ability to find and close more deals, get more customers. By the way, I'll throw out some numbers. And if you want to post something like, hey, that's pretty wild, you seem to know me. So of all the companies, everything at work, here's the composite. The average MSP is somewhere still around 14, 15 employees. Revenues of, I'll give you a range, 3 to 5 million. Managing 50 fully managed clients and managing about 1,000 to 1,200 endpoints. Now that's going to be the average. If you're in there, it'd be cool if you drop a note, but that is our industry. And then of course we have smaller ones, we have bigger ones, but that profile is who we are. And then guess what we need to do? We all need to, by the way, this is just as good for me as for you. I need you to grow. We as vendors want you to grow, so that we can service you more and more, right? And then we can grow as well. And so I think it's your commitment to revenue. And I know, let's get into some stuff, into some shit, so we can show you some ideas. But
as we're jumping in there, though, in the chat, we've got a couple that are at the average, and one who just got past the average through acquisition. So
congrats.
and one who's really confused how you knew exactly where they were. So.
By the way, you know why? And I really want you to take this away, because the old school way is sales is an art. And I would tell you that it's exactly the opposite. If you ever want to see analytics at its fullest, dig down deep into marketing. They are heads down. I was a marketing major once I got my GED, and I thought that would fit my personality because it's like, and I can be loud, I can have all these great ideas. To come to find out that sales, marketing is extremely methodical, extremely analytic, extremely data driven. And then from that, that sets up your sales motions that we're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the M&A one's fun too, because I always thought that M&A was a way out of fixing a problem in a way, right? A lot of these MSPs I see, they do M&A because they suck at organic growth. And what is organic growth? It's revenue generation. And right, it's the, I didn't figure it out, so I'm going to hire somebody and hopefully they figured it out. And they still don't, right? So they have to keep doing M&A to grow, because what is the realistic in business? Revenue churn. You're never going to get away from it. There's always going to be someone that eventually has to leave you because they got acquired or they went out of business. So you just have to in the art.
Yeah.
And Dean says in the chat, M&A just makes more problems, right? And most likely just different problems.
Yep.
Well, so Spender, I've definitely done a lot of M&A. It's a unique challenge, the blending.
It is. So, Alex, let's get this kicked off a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think, one of the conversations that we hear most from MSPs, and I work with over 1,000 MSPs, well over 1,000 MSPs now that we're at ScalePad, is that lead generation seems to be that block to growing the business, right? A lot of them say, hey, I can close a deal if I get in front of it, or I do pretty well with customers when I get in front of them. Of course you do, because those are those soft referrals that kind of fall in your lap and are easy. But filling that top of the funnel is the really, really hard part. And this Jill Rowley quote is just interesting, right? Lead generation is about leveraging data. There's to Adam's point, and technology to engage, educate, and convert potential customers. So if we really dive into that, Adam, I'll let you. I see you've got a thought on that. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I just want to add something on that. This, look, when you live in a full, robust go-to-market, we're trying to get customers. Congratulations, you will have churn. Congratulations, you will have more rejection than you will have success. Who cares, right? Now, every industry is different on, hey, Adam, if I get 100 opportunities, what will my close rate be? What my average deal size be? Well, you guys know your average deal size, so you know your target. The average size of an average client for an MSP is still about 25 employees, right, across a diverse amount of different businesses, law firms, hospitals, doctors, schools, whatever. And so, if you take your 25 and you multiply whatever your pricing and packaging is, there's, again, everyone seems to be in that $150 to $200 per user, per seat. Some are now starting to move out, and generally what I'm seeing is, and you guys drop notes, please, creating separate security packages. So maybe an advanced security package. Now, Andrew Morgan and I are very, very close friends, for those of you that do the cyber call. And so you hear a lot about how to price and package on that. And we're very in a line. The main thing is, don't keep putting more cost. Here's a little advice. Don't put all more cost into all you can eat. If you're expanding your offering, by the way, this is the number one thing that I generally wind up helping MSPs with. Oh my God, Adam, if I raise my prices, they'll quit. They'll fire me. And out of all the time I've helped people raise prices, in the end, maybe you lost one customer somewhere, and every single time the MSP has said, that's a customer I probably should have fired. They weren't profitable. They barked at a small increase. They know you're doing a good job. Your job is to protect them. When you don't protect them, they're going to point the finger at you. It costs money to protect them. You have the right to offer a separate package, an additional package, or increase your all you can eat. If you do nothing else and take one thing from this, I would really hope you guys would take that, go look at that, and see how long it's probably been since you've done anything with your pricing and packaging. Don't be afraid. You're their trusted advisor. Anybody that left you, you may lose one, probably lose none. You're going to realize that it's a customer you should have probably fired anyway.
And you know what's funny about that is we had Wes on a few weeks ago, or a few sessions ago, Adam, and we talked about how your ideal client profile really matures with you, and that there is a point to where the client you had yesterday might not be in the profile tomorrow. And that's expected churn, right? There is a level to where you do want to churn some customers because you may mature out of them. And whenever I hear clients or MSPs of mine go, oh, well, that client's been with us for years and day one, and they supported us and they helped us get here. And I go, well, how profitable are they? And they go, well, they're still paying $40 a seat.
Yep. Not good business
we all
for
have
anybody.
That customer.
Yeah.
I just put in chat. The customers who got you here. The customer who got you here isn't the one who will get you where you're going. And I think that's important. But that kind of circles us right back to Adam's statement about commitment to growth. And we were kind of talking about what it takes really to build that predictable sales model. So that's where we want to head with this with this webinar today. Let's kind of dive into what it looks like to build a predictable sales model and to really get to a point where we know what comes out the other end of this funnel. Because that's the beauty of this, right, Adam? And you can speak to this. When we do it right, we start to learn the math problem, and we start to know how many leads we have to feed the top of a funnel to bring money out the bottom of a funnel, and we start to understand what predictable revenue looks like.
You can get so methodical that you will get bored. And I have no problem sharing that. I've loved starting and being a part of a lot of really great companies in the space. Really super proud. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed your engagement, at least while I was there. I can't speak, I guess, while I'm not there. I'd like to think they carry on. But, then, why leave? Like, why ever leave anywhere? And it's because I think when you really get good and understand the process, you can tell the future is the only way I've always explained it. You can predict year out, next month, next quarter, 2 years out. And it really is that commitment to building a methodical sales process that is repeatable. And so that really starts to get into the data. And we're going to talk about a few things, right, guys, ways to get there. We're going to touch on outside, internal, should I outsource? When should I bring it in-house? We're going to talk about a web presence. We have to talk about referrals because you all are very, very good at it. Truthfully, MSPs are better at referrals than vendors, and we need to learn from you more on that. But how can you encourage them more, right? But the main thing is to set the tone is we're trying to build something that is methodical and repeatable. What do I mean by that? You have to know your numbers. So for example, I'll share mine. I'm always very transparent. I have outcallers, BDRs. We're going to talk about how they outcall and how yours outcall. Some will be informed calling. Some will be some more generic cold calling. Each one has a different conversion rate. And you have to know those conversion rates because then if I make, for example, for every 60 calls that BDR Mind makes, they create a sales qualified opportunity. Then following that logic, if they make 1,200 phone calls, they'll create 20 sales qualified opportunities. If I know my conversion rate based on my definition that my company employs to what a sales qualified opportunity is, if my conversion rate is 40%, then 40% of 20 of the 1,200 calls is going to be 8 closed deals. Now I'll make up some numbers to keep it simple. If my average deal size is $500 MRR, then I know based on those 1,200 calls that they're going to take, the 8 closed deals multiplied by 500, and I've closed $4,000 of MRR. Mm-hmm. If that confuses you, you don't need to be confused. You can put it into a spreadsheet. It's data. I will give you the spreadsheet. But the main thing is understanding that foundation of all the things we're going to talk about now.
Well, and if it confuses you, I think this is the opportunity to say, please reach out. The last slide will have all of our LinkedIn information on it, and we will send you the recording, and you can harvest it from there if you need to. But, we are here to talk you through this. We don't want to throw a bunch of stuff at you that's confusing. We want to make sure that you understand this as you go through it. But it literally is just a math problem.
Yeah, Alex, that just to that point, I gave you my math, right? Mm-hmm. Your math is going to be completely different. The roadmap is exactly the same. You're going to do X of activity. It could be a call. I gave you the call. It could be X amount of spend on digital. And that's going to give you a predictable amount of leads back based on how much you put into it, invest. So it really, don't get caught up in the specific numbers. I wanted to give you an example. Let me be very clear. In the MSP world, your conversion rate will not be the same as mine. It will be less. Very different when you're calling, B to the types of organizations you're calling, right? We also need to understand, it's estimated that about a third of SMBs in North America now have an MSP managing them. That just means you're going to be calling more and more people that already have a competitor. Guess what? Do you have ConnectWise and get calls from Kaseya or Ninja? Do you have a different product? Do you have StorageCraft? And I'm making these up. I have no favoritism. And from Call from Datto, it's the same thing. You are living more and more the world of, you need to understand your narrative and how to differentiate, because you're going to be trying to displace competitors.
Well, I think that opens a really interesting question. When I make a call and I get, hey, I'm under contract with XYZ competitor, how do I handle that? What's the right thing to do there? That's not a no. Right? Adam, what's your take on that? How do you train your BDR to deal with that?
And unfortunately, here's what I hear most of the time when I do like ride-alongs with MSPs and even with other vendors I work with. They go, oh, well, thanks. Glad it's all over. Why would you ever do that? First of all, they didn't just hang up on you. They talked to you. So now you have to try to probe. Now, understand, when we probe and try to go deeper, we want to be respectful. You don't have a lot of time to lollygag, because you guys know how you get calls from vendors yourselves. So you need to be on point. So, one of the probing questions would be, hey, if you don't mind me asking, first of all, thank you for sharing. Can you help me understand, what do you like about that vendor? Do you see some challenges? And then I always like to give an example. And then what we would say is, for example, I'm going to go back to my Automate days, and when we used to talk a lot about scripting, right? And at that time, we were really one of the differentiators, because I would call a Kaseya customer and they would say, we're really happy. And I'd say, thank you very much. Hey, could you help me understand? One thing we hear from people that have converted from Kaseya to us, or a problem they challenge with, is having more ability to create custom scripts. Is that something that's important to you? Now, I can play this game as long as they won't hang up on me, right? And even then, I'll follow up with an email and say, thank you. And I did just want to follow up. I appreciate you sharing. And I would highlight not 100 things you do different, but highlight the things that you really do think define you as being better than your competitors. That could be anything. You do free assessments, right? It can be just about anything. You believe that it's important to spend more time on site with your customers, less time, more automation. That's for you to define, but you need to know your narrative.
Well, it's know really your narrative. It's knowing your profile, right, of the market you're going after. And this is why I think some MSPs that have a niche, or really, really just drilled down client profiles, can be so successful, because you can easily differentiate yourself without having to appeal to the masses, right? You can be one thing to someone very specifically. And beyond that, right, just because they tell you, hey, we're just really content with Kaseya, you can always ask that really great question of, hey, when's that contract up? So that you can go ahead and call them maybe 60 days before it expires, set that reminder. Because again, like Alex, you said, that's not a no. They still answered the phone. They're still talking to you. So why wouldn't I try to then call them right before the contract ends to see, did that narrative change?
And I'm probably going to engage with them once or twice between now and then, so they still remember who I am, right? I'm probably going to do a very, very non-invasive touch point with them. Maybe invite them to an educational event or do something else. Adam, you and I talked last night as we were prepping for this about some of the different cadences and the cool things that you can do. But I'm going to do something to reach out to that person and touch them in the middle, so they remember, hey, that Alex guy, he's kind of looking out for my best interest. So lots of things we can do there.
Yeah, anybody that's ever seen Tommy Boy, classic, if you've never watched it, classic sales movie, have to watch it. Chris Farley, it starts off at the beginning. He just taps out first time somebody puts up a barrier. That is the beginning of the sales journey. And I do appreciate that's a little challenging if you are an MSP that has primarily lived in referral growth, because you really don't have to deal with that very much. But it's very normal. It's the world that everybody else lives in that sells anything. And I'm always excited when people start to share the barriers, because I can begin to understand what they are and then how I may be able to help address and those different barriers. And by the way, look, in sales, a lot of time is also really being appreciative and understanding when you can get more information and know that you're just not a good fit. I always teach all my salespeople that's as good as closing a deal. is that when you can be fair and honest to a prospect and go, based on everything that we shared with each other, I would not be a good fit for you, and you can
Yeah.
part ways friends. That's awesome.
It's always interesting too when you tell someone that, because they almost get defensive and go, but why? I've had some turn around and almost beg to do business with you at that point. It's really interesting to watch.
Well, and I think back to some of my MSP days, right, to where it almost allowed me to understand whether a client left me or a prospect said no, to really be able to say, okay, is that something that I now need to strengthen my process on and say, do we need better objection handling? Do we need to nurture the relationship further before we go in there and throw them a contract? Do I need to look at some of the other things deeper in the funnel to say, hey, did this client profile or this prospect result in a no because either I didn't qualify them fast enough or it was pricing, right? A lot of times we jump right to pricing. We go, oh man, I got to give them a discount. That's why I didn't get the deal closed. When really it's they just weren't a fit to begin with. They were either too mature for us or they're too immature for us.
Yeah. And in chat, Crystal's kind of chiming in, telling us that saying no works a lot more than people realize.
By the way, there's a book written on it, and I forget the exact name. It's like The Art of Saying No. So if you want to read a book on it, it's out there. But yeah, there's no doubt. Look, the ideal is we want to find prospects. We want to find good prospects that can turn into good customers that won't leave at the first hiccup. None of us are perfect. You guys have experienced that with us as vendors. Pick any vendor, and we're going to have hiccups. Certainly want to pick a relationship, a partner, a customer that that can be there with you when you go through some of those challenges that inevitably happens to all of us, and that we have the right partner that can be transparent, not try to hide. Certainly, that's what you guys want from all of us as vendors. And at the same time, we want good customers. We want customers that believe in the products that we offer. That's the same thing for you guys. You want clients that believe in you and in your service that will benefit from it. But again, listen. If another thing I would say, if you left this and after this, you sat down and you just really spent time on your own narrative. Like, why are you different? Do you even know? Like, can any of you fully articulate why you are better than your competitors and why I should use you instead of another MSP? And I think that's something that you want to think through. And don't just, be because we're lower priced. You won't keep a customer that way. You can be cheap. I see it here locally. There's a low cost MSP that's been in this area where I'm at in Florida for about 12 years. And inevitably, I see a lot of the people that are able to steal away on low price eventually go back to their tenured MSP.
Well, and that just becomes a function of your scaling abilities, right? If you don't have enough margin or enough purely dollars baked into your offering, you can't do a great service. It's going to be cut rate, and that's just who you are, right? There's nothing bad about that. Hell, there's people in our channel that tried to go after low market, and they're struggling right now, right? They tried to be the $30, $40 a month MSP with automation, right? But it's showing that there's only so much you can do when you only have $5 to $10 to deliver service. And I want to answer something that got asked in chat, which is, Ron asked, are these numbers necessary when I'm trying to develop a sales department? And I think there's some interesting answers that can happen, right? Because a lot of MSPs that you mentioned, Adam, in that 10 to 15 range, a lot of them are owner-led sales. A lot of them are one-man sales teams. So do these numbers matter, Adam?
Numbers always matter because they matter to what you're trying to accomplish. So the whole thing is, I sometimes work with MSPs tell me they want to triple. Okay, let's talk about that. Time frame, all that, current, place and time where you are with revenue. We have to start to do the math to understand what you're trying to accomplish. It's always going to lead to math. So we need to understand a sense of what you're trying to accomplish. So a lot of times, if anybody's, I do a lot of the live speaking stuff, and I like talking about this, and I'll start off by saying some silly stuff. How much would you pay a sales rep if I told you you could add 500,000 in new ARR, $1 million in ARR, right? I play this and I go, would you pay 100,000? Would you pay 200,000? Would you pay 300,000? Right? So you have to understand numbers. And then so somewhere in there, the answer is yeah. So to build a sales process, no. But if you want to understand, like, are you trying to add a customer a month? A net new customer a quarter, 10 a year, we have to get into the math so that we can understand that numbers. How many leads are we going to need? How many activities? How much money are we going to need to spend on our, our digital? What are we going to do with social? You have to figure it out. And by the way, not one of them will get you where you want to be. It's going to be an aggregate of a lot of different motions. But I would say, Ron, the answer is we do have to have an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, or aren't we just kind of like, yeah, we want to build a sales team. So I know, for example, for me as a vendor, I'll use LionGuard, not even CyberFox. I started with one. I knew with one that I knew we could make 1,200 outbound calls a month, that I could create 20 opportunities and close 8 deals at about $400 a month. That was 3,200. That would not get me to where I needed for the plan. So I had to incorporate the numbers and where we wanted to be, within that first year. And I had to say, okay, I'm going to need 10,000 calls. Then I had to figure out how much that would cost me. And I had to start to build models. And so I would say you really need to do both. But I would say this, I'll always come back to this. It does start with a commitment. If there's no commitment, you're never going to get started.
I think that's so important.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's super important to realize that even if you're a sole proprietor, even if you're owner-led sales and you're the guy doing it all, you've got to set yourself to that commitment that Adam talks about. You've got to know that, hey, in order to hire the next guy, I need to generate 200 grand in new business so that I can pay the next guy. And so that, even if that's just your first goal, right, is bringing on the next sales guy so that you can now have 2, or so that you can start to step back out of that role and start to scale it. The numbers matter. You have to be selling towards that end goal.
Can we put that slide back up? Because I think that'll help this conversation a little bit about the inbound versus outbound. Okay, so let's go through the example you're owner-led, right? By the way, anybody that wants to maybe raise their hand if you have 2 or more salespeople, it'd be awesome to hear from you. But let's go with owner-led, right? Because a lot of times that's where people reach out to me and go, hey, I do want to get going. What should I do? I'm owner-led. So we got a couple things. They go, should I hire a sales VP? Okay, well, let me address that one. You have no sales motions. The first person you should hire should never be a sales VP, right? You're going to spend a premium on a leader with no team, right? Sales VPs are leaders, not the guys that are going to, or gals that are going to jump into creating leads. So if I was going to hire my first person, lower cost, I like to start to groom with a BDR. They're the people that part of their objective, they're going to make that 1,000 to 1,500 outbound calls a month. We're going to have a model. We're going to expect X amount of opportunities to be identified. And then we're going to expect X amount of those to close. It could be 1 a month. It could be 1 a quarter, right? Because we have to dig into your particular closing numbers, right? Your ratios, your conversion rates. Then what happens is, here's what's really cool. By the way, this is how I built CyberFox. Everybody at CyberFox on my sales team had at most 1 year of experience. Most I hired right from college so that I could imprint on them, right? Teach them the best practices so that, I didn't have to inherit a bunch of bad habits. And so if you think about it in the same, your commitment is to this, and your commitment is to, let's say you did it on the inbound way and you hired an inbound, meaning that you're going to hire him as an employee, and that you're going to pay him about 45, 50K base salary, and you're going to give him another 25, 30K additional on target commissions for hitting all these targets. And anybody wants to get into this one-on-one, reach out to, I know any one of the 3 of us can go over this with you. You can hit up any of us. But, there's that way. So I can bring someone inbound. Why do I like bringing someone inside and being part of my company? Because just like I told you, if I told you that 4 of my top 6 reps were former BDRs that were former I hired out of college, and they do their own demos, and they've embraced the technology, and they have an open mind and they're learning. You need to do the same. You need to expose them to your internal resources so that they can learn. You need to teach. You need to coach. You need to have a methodical, recurring sales meeting with this person, starting with 1, your owner-led. Plan B would be, I hear you, Adam. I don't think I'm quite there yet to handle on my own. Well, look, there is a lot of outsourced companies that you can outsource a BDR to. They're generally going to charge you the same cost. Honestly, usually you're going to pay a little more. But what you get with when you outsource, they generally will have a database, which you may not have. By the way, you could easily have a database. We can always talk about that. But where to get, contacts and prospect data. But you do have a choice. Again, to me, it's a commitment. Are you willing to take on the little bit of extra that it will take to launch an internal sales team, which I'm always pro? Or do you feel at best that, you know what, I'm not quite there. I need to jump, I need to step into it, and I need to outsource to start? Fair enough. Pick one.
Well, and coming full circle with this, I think it's always in this conversation about ROI. Because as you mentioned, Adam, right, going into the KPIs and the data, you have to understand that if I have a certain level of growth that I'm looking to achieve, that means I need to add a certain amount of revenue. That means that it's going to need a certain level of investment into achieving that revenue. And when you're small, you may just not have that cash to make those investments. And when you start to see some of these services like the, outsourced marketing, outsourced cold callers, outsourced even lead gen companies that do everything under the sun, they're not cheap. And none of these companies either, and I hate to say it, especially if any of them are on this call, it's very hard to have accountability into the ROI that they will bring you because they don't know your business like you do. They won't be able to speak to your business like they do. And if they say that they're going to close those deals for you, they're going to tee them up, but there's a good chance they're either not going to be qualified like you would qualify them, or two, your ability to close a deal still inhibits the success of this lead gen company. So if you suck at closing, or you suck at packaging or identifying your client profile, this lead gen service is just going to be horrible.
There's some good ones out there, but here's the thing. When I say good, I started a company. The challenge is you don't know which rep you're going to get. And, I have done work with enterprise level ones like Rainmaker, Market Star. And, these are global companies. It's the same challenge. Some are good, some aren't. And are you going to get the good one? Or are you going to get the not so good one? You're going to pay a premium. But if you were going to do nothing, right? Like, we're not anti, right, Kyle? It's a matter of, look, you're going to get less. There's more risk, more unknown, rather than if you really jump in and commit and you hire that first person and you begin to coach and teach. Now they're going to grow up with you. They're going to learn the business from the mailroom up, which hasn't changed, right? You always learn more as you're kind of inside a company, and you learn from the bottom up and continue to gain more and more knowledge. And so look, I'm not going to lie. I'm definitely pro hire internally.
Well, yeah. And when you do it internally, you get somebody who probably sits 25, 30 feet from the engineers. They see that your team cares. They understand the culture. They start to become the culture as opposed to trying to hire it outside. And so there's a lot of advantage to that. But
you know what the other advantage, Alex, is? Let's talk about it. You guys were all MSPs. So let's say you're owner-led, right? You and Alex, or you and Kyle, and you have that internal salesperson, right? Young salesperson, beginning of the career, you're teaching them. Now all of a sudden they're doing their job and they set a couple appointments. Geez, how cool is that? You're going to take them with you. And when you take them with you, you're teaching them. Now all of a sudden you're taking that young person who is an inside salesperson. Their job is they're going to know less and to prospect and follow up on all types of leads, inbounds, outbounds, everything. And now all of a sudden you're taking them on calls. You're grooming your full-time sales rep. Here's what the beauty of this is. Same as vendor. Line guard, phase 1. I had one. Phase 2, I introduced a BDR to a sales rep. And now I have a territory. Now a BDR that maps to a sales rep. Then guess what happens? That BDR, you ramp that person up. That person now becomes a sales rep. Now you bring in 2 more BDRs. And next thing you know, you may stop right there, by the way. You may stop at one BDR and 1 sales rep, right? Depending on your growth objectives. But to be fair, what I just described to you is 99.9% of how every vendor grows, right? That's
it. Just continues to scale.
And then it's scaling to how far to that, whatever your TAM is. And then, Alex, remember we talked about this last night. One thing you need to understand is, okay, let's say you're a global MSP and you support every medical clinic across the United States. I'm going to make up a number. Maybe there's 20,000 of them. So your TAM, total addressable market, right? You have potential of those 10, 20,000 companies. Let's say you live in Nashville. And in Nashville, you do anybody that is an accounting firm. Maybe there's 200 of them. Well, your TAM is going to be very different. So if that's your business model in Nashville and you have 200 potential customers and that's it, well, you're not going to need a giant sales team. But if you have a TAM, total addressable market, that is 10, 20,000, well, certainly you're going to have the opportunity to have an extremely larger sales team. And that's kind of what I talk about. Like, there's no one number. You have to understand all those things, and it will always come back to commitment. And then you do got to know your numbers and what you're trying to achieve.
So once we've started to bring those folks on, right, we're starting to build out this process. Let's talk about what the journey actually looks like, right? We don't just call somebody once, get our yes or our no, and move on. You and I talked about this a little bit last night, and I really appreciated your take on it. So I want to hear you kind of riff on this. But what does this look like from the time that I pass my cold caller, a list of leads? What does that interaction look like for a lead over the life of this, this interaction until they become a customer?
Yeah, and I think we're talking a little bit about I can ask for something, I can give something, and we're going to break that down. By the way, it's imperative. All your leads sit in a system. If they're in a spreadsheet, there's probably a couple of you that are going to see this that you're going to go, he knows me. I'm keeping all of this in the spreadsheet. Please change, make the commitment. I know it'll require some work. Get all your information into your system of record. Some of you may be even using HubSpot. I use HubSpot. Don't you guys use HubSpot?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Alex, are you guys using HubSpot? HubSpot's a great one. Simple. Everybody uses it. Don't need to go to Salesforce. A little bit harder. But get your information into a system, because that's important, because we can track the journey. So let's say we bought a list. Let's say I'm an MSP. I'm going after law firms, and I want to call all law firms within 100 miles of New York City. Okay, cool. Right? We can support those. And I've crafted a unique message. I'm ready. I've understand our unique value proposition. And now I have this list. They have not engaged with us. And we're going to talk a little bit about cold calling, like we started off earlier. And I'm going to have my very timely 15 seconds or less. Here's who I am. Here's who we service. We service others like you. Here's the driver. And guess what? Congratulations. You're now going to start to get rejection, right? They didn't respond to that. They're not interested. They don't know you. You're not a trusted advisor yet. Stranger danger. Okay, cool. I update my notes. Here's what's really interesting. 4 weeks later, we decide to run an event. One that I've shared with some of you before. I'm going to rent a movie theater. Movie theaters, I wish I could see everybody. I'd ask you to raise your hands how much you think it's expensive. You can actually rent an AMC movie theater, or just about any of them, for about $300-$400. I do it on a whim, to just invite a bunch of friends and family members and say, hey, I got us a private theater viewing of, the new Spider-Man or Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever, Top Gun. So you can do the same. And then what happens is you can also offer some free concessions. So now what happens is, the first time I called you, it was about me. Hey, here's who I am. You don't know me, stranger danger. Here's how I can help you. Blah, blah, blah. Nope, not interested. Now imagine the next time I call you, hey, Jim, I don't know if you remember, I called you, or Jane, I called you about 4 weeks ago. You weren't interested. I wanted to invite you to something. It's something we really love doing here in New York. We rent out a movie theater, and we love just to get to know the community that we serve. No strings attached. It's going to be at so-and-so time. Please bring a family member. We'd love to have you come and join us. Now, I know a lot of you may do that. You guys may do luncheons. You may do breakfast. You may do dinners. Here's what I always say about that. I've done breakfasts, I've done lunch, I've done dinners, I've done cocktail hours. And the only thing that matters there is you have to know your geography, and you have to know when people will and will not travel. Some people in certain geographies are like, no way, I can't do it in the morning. I'll get buried in traffic. Some are like, no way, man. At the end of the day, getting crossed down, can't do it, not going to do it. So you got to understand that. But, some of the things like Alex and I were talking about are understanding the dynamics of I want something, I can give something. What I'm trying to do is find the way to create an opportunity for you to get to know me. And that way I can take away the stranger danger. Just like you all hate a lot of us when we call you guys, nope, 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 I'm good, I got it. Stranger danger. You don't know us. We're going to try to sell you something. I don't want to spend any money. I don't want to talk to you for an hour and a half. It's the
It's
same,
so
guys.
no, you're totally like it's funny because I think we get so afraid of the no, we get so wrapped into the no, we think it's a one shot opportunity, and that gets so ingrained in our minds that we then become fearful. It almost becomes almost parasitic because now I'm afraid to invest into a BDR or invest into sales and marketing. And I know someone earlier asked, like, what is a budget for sales and marketing? I think the last thing I saw was like 9 to 10% of your revenue was the national average for sales and marketing. And Adam, I don't know if you've ever gotten into the discussion of what, an MSP or any business that you've operated in, that budget from a perspective of constraints, not of opportunity. How do you typically see or how do you structure that operation?
Yeah, and the other thing I have a problem with fixed numbers, and I appreciate everybody who's trying to put a fixed number out there. I think that can be very limiting. So I think it really goes back to that commitment and understanding what you're trying to achieve. So if you told me you're a $3 million MSP and that you want to be a $10 million MSP and you want to do it in a year and a half, your spend's going to be a lot higher than the MSP I talked to that's 3 million and says I want to grow 20% over the next 12 months, right? So I think it's
Yep.
understanding the numbers. I think it's understanding what it costs to like hire a BDR. Hiring a BDR on target, generally, you can hire them. I've hired hundreds of them in different markets for about 75,000 on target, a fairly reasonable price. Your commitment price up front, a salary, is going to be 45, 50K, depending on where you're at. And again, we're hiring them out of college, right? Or if you can get someone, I've interviewed a ton of people for you guys where you say, will you do an interview for me? I'll do it every single time for you guys, right? You want to get some validation. You think you got the right person. But then from there, we have to think about all those other numbers I keep kind of hammering on. Okay, what's it going to take for me to create 20 opportunities, right? Where are they going to come from? And then understanding that cost and understanding that 20 opportunities for an MSP will maybe result in about one close per month. And then understanding what your ideal prospect partner profile is, customer profile, and that, hey, we look to be around, guess what, right? The number I said earlier, 25, 35, $100 a month RMM type customer, which then we back into, which means I need to talk to 25 employee prospects,
Companies.
right? So should I be calling a 3-person law firm? Some of you may say yes, that you'll take any revenue you can get. I know personally, I don't think I would take that deal. I think that I'm more comfortable staying within the averages and that there's safety in those averages for a reason. And that I think I would have, my personal would be, I wouldn't want to really proactively target anybody that was under, 20, 25 employees. By the way, if
Yeah,
anybody
I think
disagrees with me, put it in the notes.
well, we've already got a couple things in the notes we need to touch on before we run out of time here today. So let's do a little rapid fire and pick up a couple of these questions. The first is from Noah, and you and I kind of talked about this last night. He asks, is there some risk of becoming that guy who is calling all around town and just getting a bad name with some really, really green BDR that's out here trying to cold call on your behalf? He's worried about reputation and risk. How do you mitigate that?
Wow, great question. Thank you on that one. So first of all, but when I hire someone, they're not on the phone for 2 to 3 months, and we actually make them go get certified on the product. We have a product certification team that they then have to present the product to before we will release them to the wild. So certainly there's some when you hire them, some onboarding and coaching. Besides that, that is that methodical meeting. You all have your methodical dev and service meetings, right, as MSPs. And it's no different. You have that methodical sales and you're doing that review of the previous week's activity. This is so important, especially at the beginning, right? Now, the whole thing is you do want to make sure you get the right person. You don't want them calling and name trashing or I think it's a horrible practice when you just say we can reduce your cost by 40. Who cares? Maybe your product will suck or your services will suck 40% worse, right? So I think some of that is make sure you know to hire them, make sure there's some onboarding time, and then some role playing to make sure that you're comfortable. And then listen, there are companies with very different cultures that are vendors. And I know if I ask you, and I don't want to because, I don't want to call out any vendors, is there's some vendors that you guys get called from that you enjoy their calls more than not. Those calls that you enjoy are companies that do embrace the importance of understanding soft skills on how to sell, how to initiate a conversation, and then don't go into the heavy, well, you're using my competitor, they suck, we're better. Does anybody really buy off that? I know I don't. If anything, it's a turnoff. And so I think it's understanding your own experiences when you get calls from different vendors. Some you like, some you don't. Why do you like the ones that you get calls from certain vendors? It's the same thing. Don't be afraid. It'll paralyze you. And the main thing is hire the right person, ask the right questions during the interview, make sure they align with your culture, then have a coaching period, a training period, have a role-playing period, and then don't release them to the wild until you're like, I get it, man. I think you're going to represent our company well. By the way, during that time, you know what happens sometimes? You realize that you hired the wrong person. You want to move quickly on that. And if you don't have the right person, certainly within the first 90 days, usually I can tell within the first 60, I'm going to make a change.
And I think that's the big thing, right? And you mentioned a KPI that I want to throw out there that, and I'm thinking back to my retail days when I was helping Best Buy roll out. Role plays are such an important tool in the sales process because there's not anyone in your company that's going to be more excited to tell you no than your engineering team, right? Just have them be the prospect, have them be that person. It feels awkward the first few times that you do it. But I think back to my Best Buy days, we started to have fun with it because you would put on a persona or you would play that one really disgruntled guy that never liked buying things or from commissioned people before. It starts to desensitize. It starts to take away that cortisol response, right? That stress inhibitor from just calling somebody and saying, hey, act like an asshole. Let me see if I can sell you something.
Yeah. Well, so Matt from ProSource piped up here, Adam.
Oh, Matt?
So he said he's been through about 3 BDRs in the past 18 months who interviewed well and couldn't meet their call minimums. So they're trying outsourced at this point, kind of throwing all their eggs in one basket. So it sounds like he's struggling with this journey, Matt. It may make sense for you to reach out. It sounds like you know Adam, but you certainly know who to chat with in this group. You're welcome to reach out.
I've been in Matt's office. It's good to hear from you, Matt. Listen, and by the way, it is that commitment, right? So the commitment is let's give up on sales. So for them, for Matt in particular, ProSource, and I know at least one of them, I forget her name now. And look, the challenge is finding the right one, but it's make sure that it's upon us to create the right learning atmosphere, the right coaching. I know I'm a little more touchy-feely than most. I can only share with you that I've had way, way above average retention in a industry, a disciple, a profession that tends to have very high turnover. And I think part of that is I am willing to give a little extra up front. I'm willing to spend the time training. I'm willing to make sure I find the right cultural fit. It all plays such a part of it. But when you get an amazing BDR, and I do want to share one example, Madison, who is now one of my top reps, she had literally just graduated from the University of Tampa. It was during the pandemic. She walked into the boardroom. We happened to be we were having our board meeting. So it's a lot of like older, right, execs. She walked right in, sat down, had her mask on. First and only time I ever interviewed anybody in a mask. And she sat down like she owned the place. And I immediately was intrigued. Her level of confidence for a 22-year-old was amazing. And then we began the journey and she became a BDR, quickly became the best BDR, right? Learned fast, always asked questions. And then it became very, very easy to promote her. And now she's one of our top reps. And the only thing she'd ever done was go to University of Tampa to get a marketing degree. And before that, she grew up in her family's restaurant business.
And now she comes on the road with you guys so people can come by the CyberFox booth and ask her what it was like coming up as a BDR.
And I don't even understand half of what she says about my own company. I don't know the products in Italy.
That's hilarious.
What's funny is that reminds me of a quick tip. It'll only take 2 minutes to go through it. Is I knew an MSP where they literally would go to Nordstrom's or Macy's and stand in the middle and just wait for someone to approach them. And that first person that approached them, they offered them a job because it's so difficult face to face and in person. Right? We all think about recruiting being this difficult task. But there are so many parallel industries when it comes to sales and account management to where doing it virtually or doing it in a relationship business like an MSP, it's so much easier to find people that'll be successful that aren't just technical, but they understand that, hey, if I can be at Nordstrom's and deal with somebody all day long pestering me and asking the most ridiculous things for something that costs $20, I can tell you right now that that individual can probably handle 1 or 2 upset tickets that an MSP is going to be faced with. And they're going to be more than happy to work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
Yeah, and 100%. Listen, by the way, some other things I want to throw out because I have a peer group of that, you guys know, about 50 senior revenue execs that are MSP focused, right, from the vendor side. And we were talking about this, and it's coming up a lot. When you have young people, having them be fully remote and expect them to learn will be a train wreck. So certainly, if you are, have office and you're either hybrid or 5 days a week, that's going to be conducive. And I can tell you at Lion Guard, I love Lion Guard for those of y'all that are partners, but we were all remote, and I can absolutely tell you the difference because here we're hybrid. We come in 3 days a week. My young people are able to learn at a rate. It's not that they're better or worse. They're just in the right environment. Because bringing them in, we teach them so fast, it's insane. Versus remote, it's hard.
And there's something to be said for the morale of having the person next to you who's trying to do the same thing, who's trying to build that business and kind of picks you up when you get hung up on it by a nasty jerk or something like that, and can celebrate your win with you too, right? There's a lot to be said for the culture that creates. ScalePad brings all their salespeople to the office for the exact same reason.
Yeah, and listen, I do want to, because we've wound up talking a lot about BDRs, right? And that does seem to kind of where we wind up. Anybody that wants to hit me up just on LinkedIn. I'm the only Slutskin out there. If you have kids or you're young, you probably grew up watching my brother's show on Nickelodeon called Blue's Clues. So he's the only other Slutskin that's out there, I believe. He's Jeremy. And he produced and directed Blue's Clues. And hit me up because I know there's a lot of info here. But you got to understand, BDRs, I start off by telling, I've had thousands, is, hey, congratulations. You've accepted the opportunity to take on the hardest role ever in your entire sales career. There's no harder profession. You're going to get more rejection. We're going to ask you to learn faster. We're going to push you, right? You're going to be very metric driven. And for those of you that make it through, you are on the journey to maybe being a VP of sales or a chief revenue officer, certainly being a great individual contributor, a great sales rep, where the general ratios that when you start off as a BDR and you become a sales rep, your earning potential will be about double, right? And, so I'm going to not give you the highest amount of money, but I'm going to teach you everything you know, and you're going to become a badass, and your future is going to be set for the rest of your career. And that's all going to be because you started off taking this hard job as a BDR with whatever MSP you guys are. You won't get that from outsourcing. That's the only challenge is outsourcing can work and you can have a sustained level of opportunity created, but you're never going to get to hire them, right? They're not going to be yours. And even if some of them will offer that very rarely, they're going to be remote. And we've just talked about the pitfalls of remote with sales. It's really hard.
Yep.
Well, I think we could probably talk about this all day long, to be honest. I know that we're all very passionate about it because it is business strategy, right? I think sometimes we fail to align revenue as a way to actually improve your business because, right, with more margin is more profit dollars, which means you can do a lot more fun things, a lot more fun tools, all the things that we pay our employees better, right? Give them cool benefits. There's so much that's tied to this. So I do want to thank you for hopping on, Adam. And if you guys do want him to come back on and dive deep into like account executive and sales reps and closing techniques, please let us know. Please just drop us a line or message us on LinkedIn because we're all pretty prolific on there. But I do want everyone to know that the follow-up session, we're going to dive into that middle phase for MSPs and talk about really what we should be looking for in the discovery phase, right? Alex, you talked a lot about that middle part of the sales funnel and what it looks like to analyze your clients. And in this new landscape, right, we're going to have to look at some of those cyber risks and decide, do we want to take those clients on, or do we do not want to take those clients on? And we're bringing on Wes Spencer again by everyone's request to go ahead and take a look at that.
And I'm lucky. I sit next to Wes. He's with us with CyberFox, and I get the privilege of hearing him every day. He's amazing, guys.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
But with that being said, Alex, Adam, it's been fantastic. I appreciate you guys hopping on. And guys, give us feedback. Let us know what you think of this session. And we'll see you guys all in 2 weeks.
See y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
And
we're all done.